Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us here today. On behalf of NIT University, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all our students and their parents. Before we go further, I'd like to request all of you to please keep your microphones on mute and also any other gadgets like your phones around you on mute. Our session today is titled Management Education, Staying Relevant. The two key speakers who will address this topic are Mr. Rajendra Pawar and Mr. Suresh Narayanan. Mr. Narayanan is Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India. With a master's degree in economics, he began his career as a management trainee at Hindustan Unilever, where he held numerous positions in sales, marketing, and general management. With a stint at Colgate-Palmolive in between, he has over 30 years of exhaustive experience in the FMCG industry and has held senior management and top leadership roles in leading global companies. Actively engaged with various industry bodies, Mr. Narayanan is an inspiration to all young aspiring management students, many of whom are present in the session today. Thank you very much for being with us here today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Monisha.
In conversation with him, we have Mr. Rajendra S. Pawar. Mr. Pawar, an industry visionary, is the chairman and co-founder of NIIT Limited and founder of NIIT University. For his outstanding contribution to the IT industry in India, he has been awarded the country's prestigious civilian honor, the Padma Bhushan. He has led several industry initiatives as the chairman of NASSCOM and has been conferred prestigious awards like the Distinguished Alumnus Award at IIT, the IT Man of the Year, and Master Entrepreneur of the Year, to name a few. May I invite you, sir, to begin the session by giving us a brief intro to NIIT University.
Thank you, Manisha. Thank you very much. And Suresh, very hearty welcome onto this very important session for young people. So first of all, let me just welcome all of you once again and to say how delighted I am to have this opportunity to speak to you and of course to field questions. Now this is an important conversation because particularly because we are at a very interesting time with the situation being altered and kind of interrupted very intensely by this very unusual phenomenon of COVID, which is changing many things and at least is getting us to think afresh about everything in life. So for all of you who are getting ready to go from school into your higher ed, it's a moment when surely there will be many, many questions in your mind. So we thought it's important to create this little platform for conversation between all of you who would have many, many questions about, what's the future going to hold, what's management about, what's technology about, whatever you want to ask. On one side, and for both of us, Suresh and myself, to also hear many of the questions that you put, because it gives us an idea of what's on your mind, and of course to respond to the question that you raise, because these are the very questions that we are addressing ourselves as we look at our organizations. And before we get into the conversation, just a couple of minutes of NIIT University, or NU as we call it. Now, as you people would have noted, we call NU the University of the Future. And we coined that 15 years ago when we were thinking about the university and then again, a little over 10 years ago when we started. And we use that sentence very deliberately. We aspire actually to be a role model in higher education, because higher education has been asking for reform for a long time. And as an organization which has dealt with education in a non-formal sense earlier and done it all over the world using new technologies, staying at the front end of new models of society, learning, management, we just felt that the university should attempt to be a role model, and to be a role model in a few dimensions, identified dimensions. So first of all, it should be a role model in how learning and teaching should happen. It should be a real role model in how Indian universities should do research. It should be a role model in how students learn to be innovative and therefore innovation. And most importantly, I would say, the longest lasting dimension, which we are building is sustainability. How do we groom a set of young people to become very highly sensitive to this important need of society, which is sustainability, which is living with nature, living with all sections of society, living with the neighbors, and living in a sustainable way, and living in a way which we consider seamless. So these challenges are also, by the way, being brought to the fore in this current situation very sharply into focus. So therefore, I'm glad that the university has this challenge at this time, because what we set out to do when we started the university a little over 10 years ago, we are currently in a situation we are being tested by these very dimensions on what we want to be a role model. So that's what we want to be. But what's our mission? Our mission is basically to create exceptional talent by transforming potential, bright students coming out of school into leaders in whatever field they choose. That last phrase is very, very important. Into the field, particular field that you choose. And when I say field, I'm not restricting it to a narrow field, because the era of learning one subject and it lasts your lifetime is gone a while ago. But now is actually, that change is accelerating. So young people passionate about an idea, and the ideas may change with time, have to learn how to adjust to the environment very rapidly and how to leverage the environment very rapidly. So the leaders in the field that you want to be in, that's what our mission is, to make you thought leaders and leaders in these fields of your choice. But how do we intend to do it? And I'll refer again to one of the aspects I discussed a minute before in defining the kind of university we want to be. So there are 4 dimensions. Again, one is through the use of innovative technology. We believe that learning has become more and more shaped by technology, and this period is bringing that out so beautifully. So we believe that, having dealt with almost 40 million learners in the history of NIIT, the company, which was started in 81, having worked in 40 odd countries, we've had the opportunity to dabble with technology extensively, and we see that as a very important element of making this transformation. The second is the tight linkage that comes with industry. We have well above 500 companies very closely linked for their internship programs, for course determination, for faculty visits from industry, and everyone has to do a long internship, a whole semester. So we have a very deep engagement with industry, which we think is far ahead and is a benchmark already. That's a second dimension which we think is very important to help us transform youngsters into leaders of tomorrow. The third I talked about was research and innovation. And irrespective of what curriculum or course people do, what degree they do, the first year has an element of research at undergrad level. Students are introduced to the whole approach of research. We expect students to do a paper in research, and very often we found that those papers become the basis on which some of our youngsters have built their startups, which is fairly active in the campus. And finally, I talked about sustainability. So we are situated in a place, fortunately, not inside a metro. It's an hour's drive from Gurgaon, an hour and a half from Delhi airport, between Delhi and Jaipur, in a place which is quite green, just next to a hillock. We have a little part of the Aravali behind our campus. So there's a lot of work going on how to coexist with nature. Our students are deeply engaged in resurrecting nature. So that's one dimension of sustainability. On the other side, we have the new Japanese industrial area coming up. So we have a very good eco-friendly community on the other side, new technology, eco-friendly, very disciplined. And we have the villages not too far from us. And we expect every student to devote X amount of hours in going and teaching the village kids in those village schools, whether they teach them English, they teach them mathematics, they teach whatever, but there's a deep connect. And in these days, we also are assisting the society in Nimrana quite actively as they cope with the issues of today. And then, of course, we are responsible for our own water, groundwater. We have our own closed circuits. We have one of the most advanced sewage treatment plants. Every drop of water is used to bring the forest alive. So there are many dimensions of sustainability, and we do note that the youngsters these days are very sensitive to these matters, and we want to make that very much a part of the education, this whole area of sustainability. So that's a bit, the quick kind of bit about the institution that we are building, the university that we are building. And having said that, I will now want to engage our guest today, Mr. Suresh Narayanan. So I'd like to open, Suresh, with a question, which is to ask you that, we've kept talking about management changes with time, but this time has forced us to rethink many, many things. So in your view, as a head of one of the most respected marketing organizations and not just marketing, company in the world, what do you see are the big changes coming in management today? What are the demands on managers today?
Thank you, Mr. Pawar, for having me here today and talking to young students. I believe that there has been a dimensional shift in the way management has evolved. From the time when you and I started our careers, it was based more on an academic qualification that you got from IIT, that I got from the Delhi School of Economics, and some amount of rote learning and some amount of feeling around as we grew in our careers, picking up skills either through training programs or through some kinds of exposure, and becoming a little bit more thorough in terms of our own practices. It was more trial and error. I too started as a management trainee, and I recall that at that stage, I didn't have any benefit of an internship program of the kind that NU affords to its students. I did feel that was a gap in my learning because I was an economist by training and coming into a business field of which I knew very little about. And really, it was more the greatness of the organization that I joined that really enabled me through various training initiatives and through various training exposures to gain knowledge of management. Today, the environment is very, very different. I think if you look at the COVID pandemic, what are the 4 or 5 things that if you were to manage it that you need? And I'm sure some of our youngsters would one day manage these kind of situations in their own careers. Number 1 is technology. You talked about the role of technology. You call NU the future university. The future of the world is going to be based on technology. It is not going to be based on anecdotal evidence. So I think whether your programs in digital or whether your programs in analytics or your programs in finance, entrepreneurship, I think all of these are extremely important and are pivoted around technology. The second is data. Data is now called the new oil. And data indeed is what, even in the COVID crisis, you have got the testing methodology, but then they're talking about testing and the number of testing and the number of data points that you've got. And really that ability to be able to think through analytics and the tools of analytics is a very important dimension of management today. The ability to connect the dots. The fact is that you and I know from experience, Mr. Pawar, that post facto decisions look right or wrong, but you and I have had to connect the dots somewhere along the line, and that is a combination of both analysis, of judgment, and of process. So therefore, I think that is an important attribute that youngsters need to have today. And this is the first of its pandemics. We don't know how many more difficult situations. And forget pandemics. I think normal organizations will have their own moments of difficulty and crisis that they will have to deal with. The fourth element is speed. When you and I started our career, you could take a decision and it could fructify into an action 1 year hence, and nothing really mattered because it was a simpler world and where competitive pressures were much less. Today, speed is of the essence. Similarly, in this pandemic also, speed is of the essence. And finally, the ability to take decisions. I think as budding managers, as entrepreneurs, you have to have the capability, the guts, the heart, and the head to be able to take decisions, because it's only on the strength of decisions that actions happen. So I think technology has had a tectonic shift. Data is on a shifting ground. Speed is of the essence. Decision making is of paramount importance, and therefore the management discipline that has been taught in business schools now needs to be modified and now needs to be tempered with actual experience before it is being put to practice.
So, it's interesting you make you talk of a personal example that I started with technology and got the opportunity to do job rotation in many functions in DCM at that time, and then got involved with the IT industry. And you came from economics, and you were again a big leader in the business. So many of our young students in school, and I interact with many of them, and of course when they come to NU, I spend time with them. They're concerned about the relevance of their background. So we have students here who will be with maths background, with commerce, very large number of them, with science, with liberal arts. So what's your kind of message to these youngsters on the relevance of the background? Because many people have notion that if I don't know this, I won't do that. So you talked about being flexible, you talked about being bright, you talked about being quick, which are not attributes of the subject I learned. But what would be your comment to these youngsters who are coming with different backgrounds on how those backgrounds matter or don't matter?
Look, I think, I honestly believe, and I say this from personal experience, that I never had the benefit of a management education, a formal management education. So I never had the privilege of studying at NU or indeed at an IIM or any of these places. But I still, I think, have managed in all humility to learn the essence of management fairly well. I think what is really required is an agile mind, a curious mind, a mind that is also capable of translating thought into words with a degree of confidence that is important. So honestly, if someone is reasonably intelligent and is curious and is passionate about learning about management, about entrepreneurship, about whatever area that they would like to specialize in after having had a general dip into liberal arts, into thinking. It's a very good idea that you were sharing, Mr. Pawar, that youngsters come on to research projects. I think research teaches you disciplined thinking, and disciplined thinking is what many of us suffer from. That doesn't come out of just getting 5-year degrees or going to X, Y, Z institution. Disciplined thinking comes out of process, out of discipline, and out of an outcome that you desire. And I think all of this, if it is married into a person who is fundamentally curious, reasonably intelligent, you don't have to be Einsteinian in terms of your capabilities, and you have a passionate desire to achieve something in your life, I think that is, for me, background that is good enough. I mean, if you look at institutions today or great organizations, and I was talking to somebody in a consulting company. A consulting company like McKinsey and Bain, for example, today select metallurgical engineers. They select people with specialization in digital marketing. They don't necessarily go and only pick up MBA students from X, Y, and Z institution. So it is more, I think, the kind of capabilities and the kind of competence that people are able to show. Above all, the thinking capacity. And I think if you have that as a young person, and if you're confident of yourself, I think any place is a good start.
So what we, as we design this integrated MBA that the university calls it, it's 4 years. Again, the normal 5 years that people have to take. We are very mindful of one situation within the university, that unlike a management school, we have various disciplines at work here. We have a very strong technology, biotech, geographical information systems, management, finance, computer science is very strong. So the opportunity for people to take electives is very high. About a third of the courses students choose. And not only that, the other point, and I'll want your comment on that, is that even this so-called extracurricular, we don't use that term, everything is curricular. So students are active in any one of our 21 clubs. Let's say someone's very fond of dramatics. Now the amount of time a student may spend preparing for a drama in a semester could be sometimes more than the number of hours they spend for maths or marketing. So the university gives credits for such activities as well. Now, in your view, when you look at the bright youngsters coming there, how much would you value this kind of approach, which is that you have peers in other disciplines, and then we deliberately value what you did in outside the classroom activities? Do you see it? Do you look for it? Do you find it showing up from your own experience?
I think it's a very good question, and the way I look at it is two things you are doing in your institution that is invaluable to a professional. Number one is we are all paid to, as managers, as executives, as entrepreneurs, whatever. We are all paid to be able to link the dots, and that happens by a crucible of different knowledge streams that come together. So if your young student is interacting with a computer sciences graduate, or indeed with a person who's doing data sciences, or indeed with geospatial systems, or whatever, I think the essence is not that this person has to become a specialist in computer sciences or in data sciences, but an intelligent analysis and an intelligent capability to understand technologies, processes, and to be able to interpret it, I think is very, very important. The second element you talked about, and I'm very happy that you don't call it extracurricular, because very often I find youngsters who come into the management profession, and this is even from the top business schools, they all have CGPAs that are outstanding. If 10 is the scale, they have 9 point whatever, and it's just a arithmetic error that 0.2 did not happen. But the fact of the matter is they are not able to either communicate with clarity, they are not able to make a presentation, they are not able to stand in front of an audience of 5 people and to convincingly make an argument. And I believe that ultimately management success is not just what lies in your head, but what comes to your tongue. I mean, people only listen to what you have said rather than go into your head and see what brilliant ideas you've got. So I think a healthy participation in activities like theater or cinema or music or any of these gives a very, very rounded perspective. And that is really, we talk about the soft skills and we talk about the hard skills. The hard skills are relatively tangible. You have to learn, X, Y, and Z discipline. There are theorems, there are postulates, etc., etc. The soft skills, which is human skills and human coping skills, are also equally important, and that is what has made for the success of some people. After all, everybody starts off at a particular level, and then some rise and some don't rise. One is, of course, a question of being at the right place at the right time, but some of it is also a question of exhibiting the necessary competencies and skills that are required. And that, I think, through encouragement, through inducement, and through nurturing what is commonly called extracurricular, but I'm happy to note that you call it as an essential element, is and will make for better prepared professionals when they come out of the institution.
And one last question before I ask other questions. Both your company, Nestle, globally, and our parent company, NIT, play an active role in doing for people outside our customers, segments, and so let's say society in general, which has been formalized, thank God for that, by the government to say, look at CSR more seriously. Our companies have been doing it for a long time. And so, in fact, the university project is a not-for-profit project of the founders. But even in the university, we are laying a lot of emphasis on getting students to engage with community. And I talked of sustainability. I talked of students having to do community connect, as we call it, with the various schools. I talked of students having to plant trees and look at the revitalization of the ecology. Now, I know that Nestle also does a lot in terms of CSR. What are the areas where you think at university time students should be sensitized so that when they come into the company, they're responsible citizens?
I think it's a very good question. I think to me there are probably two or three things. I would say more than programs. I think attributes that exposure to the community brings. Number one is, I think, understanding the reality of what is the not so fortunate part of society. I think it's very important for our youngsters to actually work on any community project, whether it is. I remember when I was a young management trainee, I was put into a village in Eta district for 2 months. Just given a bucket and given a few things to sleep in, and was told to stay in this village and actually be part of road building projects, be part of well construction projects, stay in a hut actually with belonging to a farmer. That was my first exposure to rural India. I had never known a village, and it still lasts with me. This has happened more than 30 years ago, but I still have fresh memories of that. And I think understanding what is the larger part of the country is a very important sensibility that our youngsters can get. And indeed, this generation, and you will be getting Generation Z, so those born after 1996. So these youngsters definitely have. They are wired much better to understand communities as compared to what our generation was like. So I think that is community work is an important part. Number two is, I think, looking at areas of environment protection, whether it is things like plastics, cleaning up our rivers and streams. I think that's an important area where young people can participate in. It is tangible, and they can see the benefit of doing it. And the third area which I believe they can work on is, you are in a water stressed part of the country. So therefore, water conservation projects which also we work on as Nestle, and so we expose some of our youngsters to it, is also a good way to get them sensitive to at least the usage of water. They may not become water technologists afterwards, but at least they've got a healthy understanding of the usage of water. So some of them go into factories, they go into our manufacturing establishments, and they have a healthy understanding of what are the nuances of water management. So community work, area of environment and plastics and water management could be good areas of engagement for the young students.
So that's been a good conversation. So I'll hand over to Monisha, if she can start now posing questions that she's got from the audience to all of us, two of us and our colleagues from the campus, the professors, and perhaps some students who are on the campus. So Monisha, back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was just wonderful listening to both of you. And I just have, two very quick questions, and both of you covered such interesting points, but I can't resist myself from asking these just two questions, and I'll maybe if both of you could answer it very briefly. So my first question, Mr. Narayanan, to you, we're looking at this, especially in today's times, a full-fledged digital sort of dependency when we create campaigns. So what, according to you, are really the emerging trends when it comes to management, education, specialization? And so tell me a little bit about that, please. Our audience would love to hear.
Look, I think, as I said, management education has clearly shifted to an understanding, appreciation, and a working knowledge, certainly, of technology and analytics. I mean, the fact is that you cannot sit in any chair and say that, look, I have no understanding of technology, I have no understanding of analytics. You might as well find yourself another profession. Digital has now become the new language of communication. I mean, the fact is that earlier when I was a young marketer, digital never existed, and about 15 years ago, digital emerged, and somebody was putting a tick in the box. Everything else was satisfied: television, press, this, that, and the other. And somebody said, "Arey bhai, digital wale ko bhi pooch liya kya?" And then digital would be put as a tick, invariably through an outside agency who happened to know a little bit more than you knew, but he charged you a hell of a lot of money because he had that specialist knowledge. Today, without digital, there is no starting point. So I think understanding digital, understanding the consumer, because that is the consumer language. I mean, all these youngsters who are there, apart from the ones who are listening in on this conversation, they all survive on that 4 inches by 6 inches instrument. I mean, that's what is their life. So I think we have to understand, and older folk like me have to understand that is the lingua franca of this generation. So understanding the consumer, understanding propositions, understanding the use of technology, understanding interpretation, all of these are very, very important, and they're dynamic. I think the important difference between management 20 years ago and management today is management was 20 years ago was relatively static. You had the same principles and you kept applying it day after day after day, and it got you a solution. Today, you have to nuance yourself and you have to understand that there is disruption and that there is destruction, and at the same time there is creation that is happening, and all of these you have to be able to understand, comprehend, and do something about it.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pawar, now that we heard it straight from Mr. Narayanan, as coming from IT and now into education as founder of the university, how are you mindful about the fact that what we are teaching in the classroom actually remains relevant to the industry outside? Just a few quick thoughts from you, sir.
Well, the simple solution that you have to go into industry and industry has to come into the campus. So I talked about one of the 4 core principles, as we call it, being industry linked. So it's not just a word. So I give an example. Every graduate has to do at least one long internship, which is one full semester, 6 months, which is the final semester, irrespective of what course you do. And this is actually also the magic and the answer to getting everybody getting placed, whether the times are good or bad, which we've been doing for 10 years. But this internship actually creates a terrific opportunity for engaging the university with the outside world. For example, when the student is doing internship, let's say in Nestle, for example. So Nestle will give the student a live project, and the student will have a supervisor in the company with whom the student is working on a daily basis. That student will also have a faculty mentor in the campus connected through technology, who is giving some updates over the weekend of technical input, but is also speaking to the supervisor. So the faculty member speaking to the supervisor on a reasonable basis. And then in some cities, depending on where students are located, the metro cities, we also have a resident professor whose job is to make sure that the student has a good mentor in the company, his day-to-day problems are looked after. So the student has 3 supervisors at that time for 6 months. So now look at it from the university's point of view. Now every faculty member has on an average about 15 students doing internship in 15 companies. So the exposure that our faculty get to real-time problems of industry is unmatched. So that also brings into the classroom the day-to-day situations of the university, of the corporate world. We have a large number of visiting faculty who come and teach, who are giving practical experience in many subjects. In many subjects, it's difficult to find faculty because subject is very new. So that we have visiting faculty coming into the campus, mostly physically, but now increasingly it's going to happen online, and that range will increase further. And finally, whenever new curriculum is built, which is continuously updated semester after semester, there are industry boards which work very closely with our faculty. And for example, many of our industry-linked master's programs are co-created, are jointly developed. So this is a very practical way to remain completely in touch for every faculty member, for every student, and for industry people. And as I mentioned, there's more than 500 industry partners. And we have just about 250 students coming out every year. So there's a deep involvement. So that's how I think the university continues to remain relevant and that continues to look ahead.
Great. Mr. Narayanan, we were hearing you speak about the skills that you look at when you're recruiting fresh talent or fresh management interns, and how things are so different from your time, Mr. Pawar's time, the way they stand today. And you spoke about some key skills that you look at, which are very, very critical today for a management intern. Now, how important is upskilling, according to you, when you hire, in the context of hiring fresh talent? How do you ensure that you're nurturing them, retaining them? So what's the concept of upskilling and how is it so important?
Look, I think the fact of the matter is that let me cover it in two ways. Firstly, what do we look for in young people? Because organization is only as relevant and as robust as the quality of talent that it has. And it's not our factories and it is not our great edifices of offices that make the organization successful. It is the quality of people that makes us successful. So therefore, there are 5 or 6 characteristics that we look for in young people. Number one is confidence. I think the ability to be able to be comfortable under your skin and to be able to present yourself in a credible manner is important. Number two is competence. Obviously, what you've learned, and it's quite apparent in the first 10 minutes whether what you've learned is relevant or what you've learned is irrelevant. The third skill, which unfortunately is in very short supply in most of leadership today across the spectrum, is courage. Right. So does this person have the courage, right, to be able to face the reality of a situation and to be able to say what he genuinely thinks is important. The next one is curiosity, and that's where your upskilling is so very important. Is this person going to be just regurgitating whatever he or she has learned, or is this person curious to know more about the organization? Why is a thing in a particular way? Why can it be not better? How can it be made better? What are the various manifestations of a particular process or of a particular function or indeed of a particular business? I think this is important. If you don't have curiosity, then you really can't grow and you can't expand your horizons. A commitment. I think this is a very, very important word today. And unfortunately, people think that commitment is directly proportional to the salary that you get. I have a theory which I have tested and proven over years, that what makes you stay in an organization is not salary, but it is the purpose and values and the recognition of your commitment that you bring to the table. So commitment is a very, very important characteristic that we look for in youngsters, and whether they have demonstrated that commitment during the course of their young careers, either in assignments or in challenges, whatever they have faced. And the last one is, I think I personally hold it very, very high, and this is a human emotion called compassion. Does this person have compassion? You're going to deal with people, you're going to deal with different difficult situations. Today in the COVID pandemic, you need leadership with compassion. You need people to show compassion. Are you going to be firing everybody simply because your business is packed up? Are you going to be restructuring, resizing, rescaling, and completely throwing people out of kilt? I think that is where compassion counts. And leadership with compassion, I think, takes care of organizations more sustainably. So I think these are characteristics, and in all of this, you will notice that this is a continuous spectrum, and continuously we look at seeing people go up the scale and improve themselves.
Great. Thank you, sir. Mr. Pawar, where do you see the education part of ensuring that our students are ready on these skills?
Well, I think if you notice what Suresh said was very interesting.
Yes.
He talked of curiosity, he talked of communication, he talked of commitment, he talked of compassion. Now, it's interesting to note that none of these are tested by your percentage marks in school. And that's the singular reason why from day one, we had decided that we will always do an interview or a discussion or an interaction between a team of people from NU, the student, and sometimes the parents as well. Because you cannot test these in a written test. You cannot see in the scores that people have got. These values we consider very important. And we evaluate the students, do a judgment on these dimensions, which can only be done in a conversation through our interaction. And it constitutes almost a third of the weightage. So to start with, selection is a key criterion in education. And we look at these, we assign a significant value, because if these things are in place, you can't, many of these things, it's very difficult to bring into people once they've come out of school. But we can look for it in these interviews. So one is that it is factored into a selection process. And the fact that a selection process takes care of this, it also translates into interaction while on campus. So as I mentioned, there are very many ways to deal with it. As I talked about the 21 clubs we have. And in fact, an interesting thing, Suresh, I want to tell you is that while there is COVID, while these colleges closed for vacations, I just saw a couple of days ago that an art competition online with students making stuff in their homes and putting it up for competition in the club, and the club declaring results. So there's an engagement outside of the classroom we consider important. And that engagement is what improves the capabilities of these dimensions. So the clubs are very active in these spaces. And so we're trying to nurture and strengthen these values. So the Community Connect program is to deal with compassion. And we see the amount of impact it has on a young student. They say it, the parents say it. Many parents have said when they came back for the first vacation, they were dealing with our staff very differently. You can't teach it in a classroom. So I think these dimensions have to be very systematically and carefully looked for at selection time and then nurtured. The competence part is easy to assess. And of course, that's what all that happens, the technical knowledge people gain, the theoretical knowledge they gain, that's happening in the classroom all the time. But these other values that Suresh mentioned are equally important. And we are a residential campus 24/7. So there's enough opportunity for youngsters to rub shoulders with the others and pick on these things. So that's happening. And that's, I think, how university systems should do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pawar. Thank you very much, Mr. Narayanan. It's been very, very interesting listening to your conversation, and I'm sure our audience is going to gain a lot from your insight. I'd now like to inform everybody in our audience that besides our two esteemed industry speakers, we also have with us in the session today Dr. Shivendra Mathur and Dr. Sushil Kalyani from the management area at NIT University, and also some of our current students from the integrated MBA course. We've been receiving many questions from you, and those I'll be directing to our speakers as we go along. You're requested to type in additional questions in the chat box window on the right side of your screen so that we can take those as well. So good evening, Dr. Shivendra. Good evening, Dr. Sushil Kalyani.
Good
So
evening.
the first question that's come to us, if I could request Dr. Mathur to kindly please address, that we are talking about a whole new evolution in the management education, the management degree. So how is NU dealing with these changes? What are the ways and measures that we are adapting at NU to do this? And if I may please request your answer to be brief so that we can take in as many questions as we can.
Thank you, Monisha. Good evening, everyone. First, see, this is a very interesting question because 21st century we are seeing that all these digital natives that we have, they have access to all information on the World Wide Web or the internet. So we really don't need to spoon feed them with the information. Rather, what we need is to show them a right way as to how to get this information. So in our journey, what we do, we partner closely with the industry and design a curriculum in sync with industry. So rather than giving a spoon-fed information, we ask them to find the resources to meet their needs. And also we have undergone a pedagogical change, because now there's a requirement that different personalities have different goals, different needs. So offering personalized instructions is also desirable, so that students can make their own choices, do their own learning, increase intrinsic motivation, and put in more effort. So this is what we are doing. So in tying up with the industry, as Mr. Pawal was mentioning, pursuing their passion, because then you don't have to teach them. So if somebody is interested in a certain area, certain domain, they make their own career choice, they make their own kind of courses, bouquet of courses, and then learn on their own. We just show them the direction in which they have to go. So gone are the days when you have to spoon feed them. Now it's a time that you have to channelize these energies into the direction of online courses, MOOCs, a lot of information, lot of material which is available, and then navigate through this path.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. Dr. Kalyani, if we are talking a lot about specializations, and now, of course, they seem like super specializations. So, what are the specializations that NIT University offers?
See, we call specializations, of the past. We remember finance, marketing, or entrepreneurship were the common kind of, specializations. And when we talk about super specializations, just because of the requirements of the corporate world or the industry, we actually have seen that now these super specializations are going to be the need of the hour. And when it comes to university and you per se, what we are we've been talking about for last 40-50 minutes now, that we have always been in sync with the industry requirements, and based on that, whatever we have been able to judge so far, that the industry is going digital. So obviously the marketing, which was a kind of traditional marketing, door-to-door marketing earlier, has now gone into that digital era, or you say the social media. So that's how we have come up with a specialization which is in digital and social media marketing. Similarly, the finance has undergone changes, and now people talk about everything in terms of the combination of finance and the technology. So there are lots of fintech companies. Everybody is providing a different kind of platform, and I think the news around us is like this pandemic has given us the opportunity, though obviously it is a very bad time for everybody, but then a few things which we are seeing as a change, that digital finance, or in the finance area also, UPI transactions or contactless transactions are so we with the finance, not only finance banking and fintech specializations, or as Mr. Narendra was talking about, that analytics is going to be, or it is already there, but then it is still going to be very important for all the industries. So our major specialization, super specialization is going to be in business analytics. So everything in terms of what industry is requiring, and going further, when we see that there are so many other things which are coming up, definitely will be open to include those as such for the specialization. As of now, along with these three specializations, we have entrepreneurship also, where obviously students opt for particular specialization who are thinking that they don't want to go for a job and become a successful entrepreneur. So these are the specializations which we are offering, and we hope that this is going to be in sync with what the industry is today and going to be in near future.
Thank you. But the fact that you're talking about such high-end subjects for students fresh out of school at an undergraduate level, is it difficult for them to cope up with this? We have a question from the audience in case there is an existing student who could also be checked for an experience.
So I was also thinking that this question might be taken from any of our students who's undergoing all these kind of things. So
If you could recommend anybody in particular, we could take that person on call.
Oishi is there, I believe. She is a student of second year.
Oishi, are you here? In case we have Oishi in the audience.
Yeah, she is there.
Aishi. Could we? Yes.
Good
Aishi,
evening.
quickly.
Yes, ma'am. So I would say that I think NU providing this super and high-end courses is really building our careers in a best way, and I think they give us options from which we can find out our interests and choices. Like after the 2 years in NU, I think I have found out that I would further on carry on with business analytics as my specialization, because when it comes to choosing what your specialization is, I think various subjects which they teach and the help of the faculty is very important. So I think then there is no problem after 2 years that you find out that what you exactly want to do, because there is a high reach in which there's high options in which they teach us. And so I would choose business analytics because the specialization is really demanding right now. Every company requires people to handle the data, and I think these courses, these specializations, choosing them would not be as difficult as right now a student who is coming from school is thinking. Like I have done 2 years, so I can say with the help of faculties and the courses that I am easily choosing it, but students should go through the process, go through all the courses, and then I think it will be easy for them to choose the specialization.
So Aishi, if I could ask you, there's a question that's come in for you. What were the subjects that you had in school?
I had commerce. I did not have science in 11th and 12th. So I was never very good with all the science subjects. So after 10th, I chose to come in commerce. So, but now I think there are many technical subjects which I have to learn, like statistics, programming. We have Python, we have R, we have other operation research subjects in second year. And also if somebody has science, they would also have subjects which is from the commerce background, like finance, accounts, economics. So I would say that firstly it is easy to cope up, because if you study hard everything can be possible. But I think with that, I think we have faculties and people helping around with the sources give us and everything. So I don't think it would be really problem to cope up with the subjects which they teach, because they teach in a manner because they know that people come from different backgrounds, like humanities, science, commerce. So till now I've not seen so much of problems facing. So it's on you that how you take it, because they for me, it was easy to cope up with some technical subjects and hard to cope up with some. So it depends on the person, and I think they help very much from their side.
Thank you so much. So just one last question, and we are almost at the end of our session. And my last question could be to the professors. Um, we're talking about this whole combination of subjects and about the fact that there are specializations and the fact that the program has to be very industry driven and industry relevant. Is there a combination of subjects that students must definitely have, or is there like a criteria that you can't really pursue a management program if you do not have certain subjects? A lot of our students in the audience, because of the fact that we also have a sizable number from the class 12th audience, are asking this question. Could I request? Yeah.
So Monisha, no, I would say that it really doesn't matter. Education has been agnostic to the background, and thankfully so. And I'll tell you the reason that anybody who wish to learn these high-end specializations, what you're referring to, can go through a rigor of the program and learn. There's no great deal. I myself have been, in fact, a non-maths graduate, But over these years, I have learned a bit of machine learning, a bit of digital marketing. So it's not that difficult at all. And anybody who wish to, from commerce, humanities, because management education per se is a combination of humanities, commerce, a little of engineering now, little of math. So it's a combination of everything. So it's a place where it's a level playing field is provided, and then with a little more effort, you can shape up your career as you desire it to.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mathur. With this, I'd like to thank our speaker.
Just one question for you, Monisha.
Yes.
I'm sure there are many more questions we have. So are we
Yes, sir.
planning to make sure that every one of them is answered by you and your team and those of us to whom they're directed, so that no answer goes because
Yes, sir.
unattended? Because Suresh talked
Absolutely.
about curiosity. So people have curiosity, we have to satisfy that. So can we make sure that every question gets answered?
Absolutely, sir. So the questions that we've gotten from the audience prior to this session and online will be resolved, and we'll be happy to take on additional questions through the regional teams.
That's good.
So thank you very much, Mr. Pawar. Thank you very much, Mr. Narayanan, Dr. Shivendra Mathur, Dr. Sushil Kalyani, and a wonderful group of students. And an even bigger thanks to this wonderful, wonderful audience of management aspirants. We are hopeful that we were able to resolve your queries. In case we missed answering something that you were asking, we'd be happy to take it offline through our regional teams. And last but not the least, on behalf of the team at NU, we look forward to engaging with you even more often and wish you all the best in your academic pursuits. All the best. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.